All right, friend, welcome back. Now what we're going to go into is step 2 of our transformation. So focusing in on understanding how profound it is to feed the body correctly so that our cognition, so that our awareness factor can be forefront for us. That is critical. Now we want to go into the environment. This is transformation step number 2. How is it that we can have an environment that actually nurtures our life? Because in the nodal configuration that we're going to look at over the next two videos, the nodes really are the life. And then it is the brain-body system and the mind that gets dropped into this life. So what environment is going to nurture us in a way that is healthy? Let's take a look at this. So again, slides are jam-packed with information. Please take it in as you need to. And if you need to pause or whatever it is, do what you need to do so that it's correct for you. So the environment is actually outside of the body. Environment is to the outside of the body what dietary regimen does to the inside. We've looked at dietary regimen. Feeding and nourishing the physical brain-body system allows for that cognition. Now we're looking at, okay, the outside of the body also needs to be nourished, this environment. So this is the nourishment. And we're not here to be buffered by resistance in our life on the outside world. We're here to navigate and glide along through the Maya. But gliding through the Maya is something that is determined by whether we're operating correctly. We are here to make decisions correctly. And are we doing that? And are we making them out of the right environment? Because your environment does a number of things. Okay? Correct body needs to happen first, always. Then the differentiated environment can happen. So between the years of 30 and 50, that's where step 2 and step 3 really hit home for us. So beyond the 30-year mark, this is where the differentiation happens. And if there's massive trauma, this gives us hints and tips on the environment. So if the environment wasn't correct, there's probably massive trauma that happened in the first 30 years. So environment is not 24/7. It is when there are important decisions. You will begin to see the differentiated environment and how the resources are used correctly or not. Resources, money. How do we make money? How do we spend money? So a differentiated body is the only way to feel resistance and have no resistance. So what kind of environment the body operates in that will bring out the best in your life. So environment does to the inside of the body what the environment does to the outside of the body what the dietary regimen does to the inside of the body. Screwed that up again, just like I did when I first started this slide. Environment nourishes your connection to the outside world. We're not in this alone. We need to connect with each other, and we can do that in the correct environments. So environment does not necessarily mean a place. It is the quality of the place. So environments, when we look at this human design graph here, and we're looking at it, environment, we can find any of these environments anywhere in the world. It's not a particular location. It is the quality of that place. So environment really becomes the seat from where your awareness can be experienced. If you're not in the right environment, you're not protected. And I don't mean protected as in putting up boundaries, blah, blah, blah. It's about not if you're not in the right environment, there's going to be some kind of resistance happening in the life, which is breaking down the cellular structure. So the first thing that your environment does is that it nourishes your connection to the outside world. In other words, it eliminates resistance, helps eliminate resistance with those beings that you're going to meet environmentally. We meet people every day. And when we're in the correct environment, that resistance starts to diminish. So what happens is that our brain isn't, like our minds then don't have to lash out and try to be right and try to push our agenda. Everything just flows correctly. That environment adds to the quality of your life. And when you're reducing resistance, you're adding to your longevity. And if you're going to take in that 9-centered journey that we are 9-centered beings, you better be healthy. Because the 9-centered journey is about coming into your flowering when you're 50. Like 50. It's a long way to 50. So you're not 7-centered beings where the game was really over between the ages of 25 and 30. So it's about only getting to that place where we're equipped. This is the complex existence, a complex Maya, that we're actually equipped to be able to fulfill the potential that's there uniquely in each of us. So you absolutely need to be healthy. So important. That's why we talk about the first step first, nourishing the physical body. And honestly, it's not like it's up to you. That fluctuation in what we call transference, which we're going to get into when we talk about step 3 and step 4, we are designed to be transferred in our view and in our motivation so that we can begin to see the duality that's happening on our planet, okay? So what's going to happen over here is that we become the witness. You are the witness. You're the passenger consciousness. And when we have this first 2 steps and we understand it, all of a sudden that consciousness aspect of us can happen. So in the right environment, you get the correct perspective. Ra called the environment the seat. It lays the foundation for the passenger consciousness to come into existence. Now step 3 and step 4 are perspective and motivation. That is the mental aspect of who we are. This is how do we keep this vessel, this meat suit that we are in. When we're looking at the design side, how do we keep this meat suit healthy? So it lays the foundation for the passenger, that passenger consciousness. So as the journey begins with a beautiful surface of human design, which is that strategy and authority. What strategy and authority does is it gets you in to this place where we are making decisions from the power of ourselves, not from our mind. It doesn't stop your mind from being mind. Mind wants to natter and chatter and talk and measure. It changes the quality of your life and the quality of that mind so that you can then watch that quality, high quality, that ally mind is what I call it, be so beautiful in the world. So that it means your mind is all of a sudden is more open than it has ever been before, because the mind closes in order to control its destiny. That's important to understand that. The mind begins to open up. And when it no longer feels it has to be responsible for every breath, the longer you're in that process of surrendering to that decision-making strategy, to who you are, this is automatically aligning the whole vehicle for a differentiated frequency. And what's so interesting is you just kind of relax into it. Again, I'm recording this and it's the year 2020. I've recorded this whole program in the year 2020. And the amazing piece of this is to watch how humanity has literally divided itself because the mind is so closed and trying to control its destiny. Now, I will be honest. When all of this stuff started happening in this 2020 year, I could feel my mind closing down, and I'm not wearing a mask. And I became very adamant about all this stuff and putting my stake in the ground. And then I just began to relax and go, you know what? I know what my reality is. I am creating my reality based off of my correct decision making. So I don't need the mind to try to pinpoint me down and control my destiny. My destiny is already written out in the stars. All I have to do is just watch it play out for me. So we're going to look at a lot of things happening here. And we are going to look at all of the different actual environments. And then we're going to take a look as well and talk about this tonal architecture. So you go into the trajectory piece. There's a module that talks about trajectory under how to accomplish your purpose. I've really talked a lot about this observed and observer. So if in your nodes, down here, the nodal configuration, this is where we are right here. We're in the design nodes right now. Take a look at whatever that arrow says. For me, it's observed. I'm left tonal architecture. So 1, 2, and 3 is left. 4, 5, and 6 is right. And where do you find that tone? Right here in that triangle. This is the observed. It's an active environment. There's activity. The physical body wants to be active. It's busy. Take advantage of the environment. Participation, interaction, and tension. So this is the teacher that's running over to the students. It's an interactive sport. If you are right, if you're over here on the right, you're observer. You're the observer of these people that are running around being observed. It's about being passive, having a passive environment, is unengaged. You are a part of the environment. So, just pops into my head is the park bench. Over here, the observed, they're jogging. They're jogging through the park. Those that are sitting on the park bench as part of the environment are observing. They're just the observer. So you observe. It's a rare interaction. And it's relaxed. So this is the teacher who sits still. It's not interactive. It's not an interactive sport. This is about sharing from your place at the desk, per se. So when we look at environment, what we want to just really grasp, again, the left environment needs stimulation. Needs to be observed. The right environment needs less stimulation, needs to be the observer. So now let's break these down, each one of these, so that you can see this tonal architecture first before we actually get into the environment aspect, okay? So smell. If you have this triangle right here and it's a 1, that's smell. It's the smell of the environment. You need to have a certain kind of odor in the room and create that smell by not letting in fresh air. You need a particular smell. This is correct for you. Don't air out the room. The room needs to have a particular smell. So you need your certain kind of smell in the room or in the house. This gives you a security. No air movement gives you a certain kind of security. This is the nose breather. So if you have a 1 in your tonal architecture for your environment, nose breathing, smelling. As the environment, everything you pick up in the environment is based off of this smell. So if the environment is correct, it will smell correct. The environment is not correct, it will not smell correct. Now look at the 2. That's what I am. It is the mouth breather. This is to have a ventilated room. Hate closed doors and windows. I do not enjoy that at all. The air has to be refreshed and changed. It's a high air fluctuation, and there's a taste in the air. You have a taste in the room connected to the stream of taste on the surface. So it isn't about odor. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. This is my experience, and this might be your experience as well. 1 and 2 are working together in the splenic binary. So all of a sudden, if there's a smell, I relate it to a taste. What did that taste like? Ooh, gosh, I got this nasty taste in my mouth. I say that about different situations. Just didn't taste right to me. Just wasn't right. That taste of that environment wasn't correct. And I breathe through my mouth. I very seldom breathe through my nose. Because breathing through the mouth, being a mouth breather, you bring all of that air particle over top of the taste buds, and you're tasting the environment. So now, let's take a look at the next binary, and this is the Ajna binary. So we're looking here at vision. Now, something you guys have walked through is the different understanding of the streams, the different understanding of the circuitry. We've walked through all of that. So now we're looking at the tonal architecture, and the tonal architecture of the Ajna is visionary. And you guys know this because we've talked about it in the collective circuitry, how the collective circuitry is so vision-oriented. And it runs through this binary aspect. Okay, so the left is being that observed person. And what's important for this active left observed being, when you're a third tonal architecture, is that things are visually stimulating. So in your environment, if it isn't busy, active, and visually stimulating, it's probably putting you to sleep, and it's probably not good for you. Has to be filled with stimulation and can be overwhelming for someone who's passive. So it's most active tone in the environment because it's outer vision. We need to be able to, outer vision people need to be able to, like this is Times Square, where you have lots and lots of different televisions or jumbotrons or whatever you want to call them. They're bright lights, they're flashing, this is Las Vegas, lots of visualization, and if it isn't the correct visual, then it's not the right environment. Okay, now we look at the inner vision. This is totally opposite. This isn't about activity. So going to Las Vegas and being in Times Square can be very difficult. So too much outer vision is very difficult. This should be dim light. So the environment has a dim light. Not too many things to look at. Visually destimulating. And this is the observer principle. You are here to look out of your eyeballs in that dim light. So maybe this is a museum that has the lights down low. It isn't about that stimulation. And what I notice here in inner vision, when we look at the first transformation, which is the actual physical body, that cognition, and here, what is so interesting to me is that I have a nephew with this. And when he has to be, when things are coming at him and he's learning something new, there's something that changes with his eyes. And it's like all of a sudden he closes his eyes a little bit and dims his own light so that he can place that into the space that it needs to be put into, so that he can pull it out at a different time. So it's about watching what is having a less stimulating environment so that the cognition and that ability to process information is easier. Now let's look at the 5. 5, This is the solar plex. So solar plex is feely. There's emotionality here. And that feeling, that auric environment has to have less electromagnetic. So if it's an environment and it's a fifth tone, having less electromagnetics around you. You feel, certain feeling that's in that environment and can feel the aura in the room. So being able to sense the frequencies, that's what happens here. So if the frequency of the environment isn't correct, it's not the right environment for you. Then when we look at touch, this is texture. This is the surface, touching the auric field again. Has to be less stimulating, clean environment. Have things within touch. Nothing lying around, needs to be cleaned and uncluttered and less stimulation. Just a couple things on your wall. You get information from the information. When you touch dirt, you get information from that dirt. So the body does not get overwhelmed. You have to know what is the feeling of that environment and how is it touching you? Is it a clean touch? Is it not a clean touch? Okay, now we're going to take a look at the actual environment aspect of this. So on the left side, this is the observed. It shows up when you're correct in your PHS. Okay. And the evolutionary progress of the color, we move from the upper to the lower binaries. There, we have a very primitive environment, an energetic environment, and then this very highly developed environment. So this is where the body can actually heal. The internal and external determination plays together. So what's that languaging? So our brain body that we just talked about in transformation 1 and the nodal aspect, they play together because the Sun Earth, design Sun Earth, and all of that transformation that happens there is the inside of the body. This is the outside of the body. So together we can heal the physical cellular structure of the body. So to accept your ice moon for death, it will be easier when in the right environment. So I don't really go into that in this program, but there is a whole process for death. So the lower color, the hardscape, 1, 2, and 3, these can be established anywhere. Just like the conditions when we took a look at step 1, this could be suburban or it could be urban. You can find these anywhere. 4, 5, and 6, they can be found in suburban found in urban and suburban also, just like the circumstances. So even though there's a hardscape and a landscape, these things can be found anywhere in the world. And then it's the quality. So knowing your tonal architecture. So maybe you walk into a kitchen, but it doesn't, and your tonal architecture is 1, and it doesn't smell right, it's not the right kitchen for you. Okay? Now let's walk through each one of these, break them down so that you can get a grasp of it. And again, we'll coach and talk about this stuff so that you can really understand it at new levels. So color number 1, we have caves. This is very primitive. So you have to have a secure place to be overnight for survival. Secure environment that gives security. You have to have a space that you can control who's coming and going out of your space. You can control 1 door, possibly 2, but it's very impossible to control 3, 4, 5, 6 doors and a whole bunch of windows. It's about having a secure environment. So cars can be a cave. And if you're, got a locking mechanism, you can lock the car doors and then only unlock for those that you want in. Tinting your windows so nobody can see in. Maybe having smaller rooms. This gives someone security. You love to stay at home because this is your security. So selective on the left, security, survival. Who will come and go out of your cave? This is not about a whole bunch of people coming in. This is not about having a crowded cave. You're going to select. It's going to be this controlling. You take advantage of who you can control, and it's about having small rooms. The blending aspect, this observer, you don't have the interaction like the active, observed person does. So people need to come to you. You do not select the people. This is about melding and blending in your environment. And larger rooms or spaces, not huge. It's easier to have people come and go so that you can blend with them. So here's what's interesting. My husband has this caves that is blending. And what he loves the most and where he makes most of his money is when he is in either the tractor or the truck, big truck, he has a semi, or in the pickup truck. And then he also has a large shop where he gets to control who comes and goes. And that blending aspect, people come to him. People come here to our farm all the time. And he gets to decide who comes and goes out of his shop. And it's interesting because what he will do is he will close and lock doors or have it so that they can't open in different times and places or different times of the year, depending on whatever's happening in our weather patterns. And he will either open one of the large doors if he wants more people to come and blend, or he'll keep that door closed and only have one of the smaller doors that will open and close. So it's very interesting to see how these caves work. They come to him and then he gets to decide how are they going to enter into my area and then who am I going to blend with or not. Very fascinating. Markets. These are the gatherers. We leave the cave so that we can gather. So it's about uncertainty. There's uncertainty out there. What kind of berries are going to be available to us? What are we gathering? What's ready? What are the things in our environment that are available to us so that we can gather them and bring them back? Very similar, like I say, to step number 1, where we walked through all of those aspects. This is still very primitive. This is the markets. So 2 things can happen here. So you can have a business of all the things that you've gathered. These people usually love to go shopping. They like markets on the street. The environment is where you can heal. Loves to be in the business environment. Clients, students, colleagues. Then with their own family. These people need to work, and this keeps them alive. And you sell products and services. So if we were to look at the observed, the internal, this is again busy, being watched in your own environment. This is the business at home. This is the grocery store where you have living quarters in the back. I had an uncle and an aunt that did that when I was a little kid. They had a gas station and grocery store for the small town that they lived in, and their living quarters were in the back. And when we went to go see them, it was fun because we got to shop in the store and then go into their home and eat snacks and chips and pop and stuff like that, which we didn't get very often as kids. But we got to go do that, and it was so fun to have that experience. Now, if your markets and your external, you don't want to have your business in your home. You want to have it away from your home because you are there to observe others. It's not about having a crowded place and interacting too much. So it's a bit about being able to have that marketplace, have that place of business away from your home, and maybe in a slower paced environment. Kitchens, we work in a kitchen. So it's internal, it's energetic, this binary and this transforming. So remember on the other side, we went from cold to hot, calm to nervous. Here we're going from wet to dry. There's this alchemy that takes place. So we alter things here in the kitchen. It's transformative. It's a productive environment. It's a power plant, a place where things are produced, laboratories, a productive environment. So the temperature in the kitchen is to be different from the outside. So it's the party place or the central gathering for productive conversations. Kitchens are a lot about alchemy. So not only is it really, kitchens per se, but it is a place where coffee shops, where there's lots of conversation happening, where things are being produced, a bakery where you can have a little cup of coffee and they're baking in the back, those kind of things, where it can be your own actual home kitchen. So on the left side, wet. So this is strategic. It's active. There's a high mutative energy and environment here. It's humid. So if you live in the desert, have a humidifier. Make sure that your kitchen area where you're producing and where you're being productive is humid. That's so important for you. Kitchens dry, totally opposite. So we know in wet areas, right, when we have a kitchen that has wet areas, or even in our bathrooms that have high humidity, we're seeing the mutation happening, right? Black mold can grow. Things can begin to grow in petri dishes. They have a wet area so that they can grow, so they can produce, so things can happen. This is the observed. It's busy. It's active kitchen. So this can be your coffee shops, your bakeries, that kind of stuff, where they're already cooking and alchemy's happening. So there is a human environment. On the dry side, get yourself a dehumidifier. This is about having a less active environment. It's more passive, so it's not highly mutative. So the wet has water molecules. We want to get rid of the molecules here in the dry. Laboratory where it's working sterile, so there's no bacteria there. So this is a totally different laboratory. Where over here in the wet laboratory, we are working with bacteria, we're working with fungicides, and we're working with whatever that grows in a wet environment. Over here, dry? No. Needs to be sterile. This is where dry things are produced. Dry goods. This is that air conditioning that dries things out. So important to have a dry. So go live in the desert. Right? Be in that dry environment. It's healthy for you. It allows for your physical body to repair. So again, less active. So maybe this is a raw vegan where we're not cooking, we're not alchemizing. We are just potentially cutting up vegetables and fruits and that kind of stuff, where there isn't that creation of humidity in the air. So coffee shops are good for wet. For dry, I would say take yourself to maybe a larger cafeteria. Even though the environment itself might be more active, you can be completely passive in that. You can sit off to the side and observe other people in this drier environment. See how people are productive. Are they being productive? You could be productive in that. Then when we get to mountains, so this is a manipulative, again, we're in this manipulative energy. and manipulative environment, where it determines, when we look at the sun-earth aspect, this is where our calmness and our nervousness is, in our fourth color in our sun-earth. So mountains have peaks, and there is not much space on the peak of a mountain. So mountains aren't about crowded areas. Active, if you're an observed left tonal architecture, you're active. You're going to interact with people on your mountaintop. This is about elevation. Highly, you're in this high elevation that has a high altitude, low oxygen concentration. So Ra always said, these are the people that can smoke, because it reduces their oxygen. Now, I'm not advocating for smoking cigarettes, but just so you're aware of it. When the environment has a lower oxygen, this is the best environment. So living on the top floor of a skyscraper, going to the top level of your home, and you get to determine that. So it's very strategic when we're looking at the left active side. It's active. You're on the mountains and you're the one being observed. So maybe you are going up the mountain and there's a helicopter that's filming you, or you're being observed by the people living on the mountain. But passive, this is about blending. And this passiveness is about blending in with the people. So these are the actual people that live on the mountain. They like that reduced oxygen. It's healthy for them. And they're just in the environment. They don't have to be active in it. They're not the one scaling that mountain. They're living in it. So these people also are so important that they take the high road. So this is not about being in the gossip or being down amongst all the people that we're going to check out next in the valleys. This truly is about taking the high road and helping people to the top of their mountain, bringing them up over top of the things that they feel are holding them back. And again, depending on your tonal architecture, you'll know that that mountain is correct because of your tonal architecture. Okay? So again, less oxygen, taking the high road, not getting caught up in the gossip. You're either active in it or you're passive in it. Maybe if you're passive, you're the one that is at, mile marker, whatever, and you're the one handing out water bottles. Those are the kind of things that allow you to be in that environment. So maybe mountains is your thing, and you're in New York City, or you're in Toronto, Canada, or you're in Hong Kong. Try to find a place where you can work that takes you to higher levels, so that you can be way above sea level and live in that lower oxygenated area, or work in that lower oxygenated area. Now, when we look at valleys is completely different. This is not about oxygen. This is totally about sound. Again, frequency. Remember, we're moving into this frequency when we look at the 5 and 6 in tonal architecture, in the sun-earth cognitive, and here in the nodal environments. It's more about frequency. So here you actually want to stay on the ground floor. You want to be in amongst the communication aspect. Pay attention to the acoustic quality of the room that you're in. You want to be on that lower level if you can. Be able to, walk out your door and flow in with the people walking down the street. So this is the movement of information, energy, and there's different people. You're close to the sea level. So there's more energy that you have when you are close to the sea level. Valley people, put them in an elevator, take them up, they're going to lose their energy. Mountain people, take them in the elevator, take them down, they're going to lose their energy. So when you can be in that place where this movement and flow, and you can be a part of that frequency, this is where you meet the people you're intended to meet. So you meet the new people that are coming to town from other valleys. You get to meet the people from the next town, next city, next country. You're connecting all the time with others. And remember, when we look at the fifth line quality, what are they? They are the messengers. They are the universalizers. So this is such a huge communication piece if you have valley as your environment. So it is really about the movement of information and energy, different people. There's much more potential here. Valleys traditionally are places where you have most of your major cities, because when the settlers settled, they wanted to be by a river so that they had access to water, so that they could put a boat in there and travel and be able to raise their animals and have access to where we put the railroads, all that kind of stuff. We built our cities around that access to being able to move about. So that specific environment is not, you can find a valley anywhere, but you want to be able to recognize that it's acoustic. So if you're left and it's narrow, you want to be in this louder area. You want the acoustics to be intensive. So we know this when we look at the dietary regimen and we look at the highs and lows. So low people do not need high intensity, but here we have narrow. They need high intensity. You can create this in the town, narrow cities. You can also find this at the bottom of a mountain. So I have a sister who lives in BC, and it's so interesting to watch how there'll be areas where it's a wide valley, and then there's animals, and there is farms, and they're spread out, and it's a wide valley. So if you were to holler, the echo it's not going to echo back. But at a narrow valley where there's just the lake, I guess it is there, the lake, and then the highway's right there, and so is the train tracks. It's very narrow. So when you open up the window of the vehicle and you listen, it's very, very loud. When the boats go by and the vehicles are all there, it's very noisy. Once you get into the wider area, the noise disperses. So if you're narrow and left and in that observed active, you want that acoustic, high intensity acoustic. If you are valleys wide, it needs to be low intensity. Has to be less noisy. It's not about a whole bunch of noise. The acoustic quality has to be less. So paying attention to that. So if you live in a city, instead of being right downtown on a lower level where you're hearing everything, you're hearing sirens and horns and dogs and everything, you want to be maybe more urban. And even though you might live in a cul-de-sac where you're still interacting, or a gated community where there's lots of interaction, but it's wide so that the noise intensity isn't as big. And now our last one is shores. And shores doesn't mean that you have to live on water. Water is good for you. However, shore is about transitions. So something that gives you a feeling of there's something beyond. There's this transition point. Now, if we were to look at this and look at the sixth line, These are the people that are our role models. They've experienced life. They are bringing this. They're not a part of the quote unquote hexagram. They're sitting on the roof. They're looking out. There's this transition spot. And they need to be able to see the horizon because this is the transition point. People who know, people will know in their landscape or not. So if you are a shore person, let me tell you, I am a shore person. Having that transition point is so important. So for me, it's natural. I am to be observed on this transition point. So my home that I have, and I've told this story numerous times in lots of these videos, I have full access to the horizon. Doesn't matter which way I look from my place of my farm. And there's this natural transition point where like one mile from me, if you were to build a home 1 mile from me, there's so many trees there, I feel claustrophobic. I go there and I visit people 1 mile away. And they've had to clear space in the trees to place their home. They cannot see the horizon at all. Whew, I get claustrophobic. There's no natural transition point for me to look out to. However, I'm living on that transition point because it's like 1 mile from me and the landscape totally changes. But yet where I am, I can see the horizon. There's no trees obscuring my view. This is really good. Beach and water, that is really good. I love going to the ocean and being on the beach. It just rejuvenates me. Where my husband is a cave person, that doesn't do it for him. Being out on the beach, sitting on the sand, he does not like it at all. He would rather be on a ship, on a cruise, and be in our cabin and be able to sit on the deck in our cabin and look out at the water, but have his cave at his back. Where me, I want to be on that beach. I want to be able to see that horizon. However, cruises are okay for me too because I can see that horizon. So it's about that natural transition point. Now, if it's artificial, it's actually man-made. We see this the cities and suburbs. There's a transition point where a village goes from a field to the village. That's how I grew up. I grew up on the prairies. So our village, my home, was one road away from field, wide open field. So I always have lived on a transition point. And that's been important for me. So even though, that was artificially made, it was still this natural, me being able to see out. Okay, so now that you know this, all of this information, what's important is that you can see it, that you can begin to recognize these different environmental aspects. Why? Because you want to be able to place yourself in that healthy environment. Recognize it. When you're making decisions, you want to be in that healthy environment when you're making decisions. If you can't get there, recognize that any of these can be anywhere in the world. So don't get caught up that one says hardscape and landscape. We can find these anywhere. We can find these in the middle of a city. We can find these right in our homes. So just relax into it. Begin to recognize the information. What is your tone? What is your best environment? And then experiment with it. Again, my tone is taste. And my environment is shores. So being able to taste the salty air, being able to taste when the wind blows through my farm and taste the air, being on that horizon, that is the best place for my physical body so that it feels like I am lubricated from the outside inwards so that I can navigate and glide through life. And that's what I would like for you. And when that happens, we spend and make money correctly for our physical bodies. All right, friends, have fun playing.